for continuity purposes later, when we bring you our special interview, you'll see Phil's moved. I've not been to the shop since March. I missed the place.
I can only click and collect you now anyway.
4020 not live, back for a Monday, is it? The 16th of November. Since we last spoke, nothing has happened in the world of rugby league. Sean O'Loughlin's retiring, which is always sad, but plenty of great tributes to a great career.
I'm guessing as well, on the basis of the fact that Jackson Hastings and Bevan French are staying, that's where the economics balance. Be very interesting to see what happens now with George Burgess. Greatest respect to him, and injuries are part and parcel of the sport. Would say that they probably haven't got their marquee money out of him in this particular season. And John Bateman coming back, obviously he won't be anything other than marquee. So I think there's probably still a tiny bit of adjustment to be done at Wigan, but they must be pleased that they've got, Hastings, French. I suspect that Hardacre as well. They're getting a really good mix there in the backs, and I guess Sean O'Loughlin retiring is paying for all that. Tommy Luluai has got to formally decide what he wants to do. It may well be that Jackson Hastings staying means that Tommy will become either a utility player or perhaps step down as well. But of course they could be going as grand final winners. I mean, I don't know how fit Sean O'Loughlin is, and whether he's in line to play again this season, but wouldn't it be great, without upsetting anybody, because we don't upset anybody on this programme, we love everyone equally, we don't revel in defeat, we don't glorify in victory, but wouldn't it be great if the grand final you had James Graham lining up against Sean O'Loughlin, and at the very least these two great retiring gladiator warriors of the modern era could be seen on television, if we can't be there in person, to acknowledge their fantastic contribution to the sport. And I don't care who gets to the final. If it's Hull and Catalans, great, but I'm just saying, wouldn't that be a fitting scenario for two of the greats to go out facing each other? That's how they...
Just checking the rugby league site to see if the disciplinary's been done yet. It hasn't. Because Catalan Dragons might have a few less players this week, at least two, after Mick McAlorum may have lived up to his reputation, and Joel Tompkins certainly did.
Yes, Joel Tompkins, who seems to have the monopoly on the word rectum. I can't really comment on the Joel Tompkins one, because I was fortunate enough to be there, and we had absolutely no idea what had caused the fracas. And I haven't seen enough evidence, because I haven't rewatched the game, to say whether it was completely unequivocal or not. I know the Aussies quickly jumped on board and were producing social media about it, so he may well have a case to answer. The McAlorum one, I think, is more interesting, and as you say, we're judging it before the disciplinary panel do. But every single tackle this year that has been to the head in a televised game, the perpetrator, whether intentional or not, has had a 10-minute sit down. I find it odd, looking at Brad Dwyer's face after the challenge, that perhaps greater action wasn't taken at the time, and I would think that even if the referee hadn't seen the incident, that the video referee would clearly have sent a message down saying, we just had another little look at that, there is contact with the head, therefore yellow card. It wouldn't have altered the outcome of the game. I just don't think that if McAlorum now gets any kind of ban, that's commensurate with the crime he committed at the time. So again, the team who were inconvenienced don't get the benefit of the penalty. So yeah, I'd be very surprised if he doesn't get a game.
I'd like to see the players who are quick to criticise referees for not making the decision criticise those who actually make the action in the first place. But that involved in criticising their mates rather than referees. But
I spoke to a renowned coach after the game who had nothing to do with either of the sides, and he said McAlorum knew he'd done wrong when he tried to pull Dwyer up, because that's the bit for him that was the indication of guilt. A guy doesn't stay down when his nose is splattered all over his face. It's I've done something. If he gets up and nobody realises what's happened, I might get away with this. So I think the feeling for some within the game was he'll do well to get away with that. And Steve McNamara saying, I didn't see anything wrong, I think possibly misreads that particular incident.
Maybe he's spent too much.
Don't.
This is your official anti-Catalan Dragons podcast, as we've been accused of in the past. Now, as well as that, the excitement, of course, is that Warrington, it's not their year, leading to much recrimination. I mean, well done to Hull. Great performance from them. They could make it to the grand final, which would upset everyone, which is brilliant.
Yeah, but why? The thing about that is, Hull have the chance of playing in their home stadium, but they'd have to be in the away dressing room. So it all balances out.
It's 2020. It doesn't matter. None of it matters.
I think that's a really interesting game to try and analyse. I mean, Hull played in that game exactly as they had in the first game of the season. They look fit, they look strong, they look big. They made that change at hooker whereby, Danny Houghton comes on rather than starts the game, had a bit more dynamism about them. Jake Connor at fullback seems to be a position they've found for him where he can have greater influence than in the centre, but doesn't upset the halfback pairing. And that's nothing against Jamie Shaw, he's out injured anyway, but it seems to be that almost by accident that could well be Connor's best position. They looked a very well balanced team that were hitting a groove. Warrington looked completely the reverse. They reverted in a big game, and I know they've won cup finals and they're one of the teams of the modern era, but in the one that they really won, the grand final, they look like a team of individuals again. And I don't know once more if that told us that merely trying to buy your way to a successful side, but not having an identity in the true sense of the core of your team is local, it's been there a long time, the way we play is X, the philosophy we've got is Y. It just seems to be that something is missing. Now, I'm not sure that changing your coach all the time finds that. I'm not sure that bringing in Greg Inglis finds that. There is something that isn't quite right, that looks like a collection of very well paid players as opposed to a team. And I'm sure that people who watch and analyse Warrington on a far greater basis than we do, and there's some great podcasts out there that concentrate solely on Warrington, would have their own opinions on that. But to me, from the outside looking in, one looked like a team, the other looked like a collection.
Yeah, better luck to all four teams in the semi-finals this weekend. We'll talk about the politics bit after our interview. Another thing that happened, Ian Watson, he's left Salford. He might be going to Huddersfield, which on the face of it seems a sideways move, but people have been talking me in on social media to say, well, actually it's not, because Huddersfield, with the academy, with the owner who is settled, and everything around the club from an outside point of view, there seems to be more advanced than where Salford are. And I guess for the job Ian Watson's done there, and I made this point on social media, apart from winning the grand final in the Challenge Cup, what else can he do at Salford anymore?
Yeah, I think there's two things. One is he's going to a club that will spend full salary cap, and he's done an absolutely magnificent job taking a side to two different finals that haven't had that luxury. So I think that you can't fault him for wanting to do that. I think the other thing is he doesn't have to change his habit too much. He can live at home where he is at the moment, and Huddersfield's within easy driving. I believe he might have some family connection within Huddersfield as well, which is important to him. So I can see why it would work for him. The other thing from talking to Brian Noble for his latest column in the new Forty20 magazine out this week. I don't think I've said that yet, have I? I think I did just then. He said that Ian, for his own peace of mind as a coach, needs to take his principles, which have clearly worked, to a different environment and see how they adapt. Because he'll only know how good a coach he can be in terms of fulfilling his potential in a coaching career if it works, in more than one place where he is part of the furniture. And Brian equated that to when he left Bradford, that he'd been there as a player, as an assistant, as a head coach for 20 odd years. He'd spent his life there and almost became institutionalized. But that doesn't tell you if what you're doing is right and the foundation that it's based on is sound. And the only way you can do that really is to take it to somewhere else and put those principles in with different people and see if they still work. And he reckons that Ian was at that point in his career and needed to do it, and he thinks that he'll be a success at Huddersfield. It's a good fit. They've got some really good youngsters, which I think, again, Ian likes working with talent he can mould. And if he needs to go out and buy a player, he'll have the resource to do it. So, I think a surprise for a lot of people, but let's face it, the jobs at St Helens and Wigan, and at the moment, as far as we know, Warrington are not available. He's taken on a challenge, and I reckon Huddersfield, it's a great fit for Huddersfield. We'll see how he gets on. I just feel a little bit sorry for Luke Robinson. I think he's done a tremendous job in the time he's been there. I think he is. You talk about culture and whatever that is. He is Huddersfield. He understands it. He's got a rapport with the kids that have come through the academy under him. I hope he's not lost to either that organisation or can find a start as a head coach somewhere else. Maybe it's Salford.
I mean, great trolling on social media by Huddersfield the other day by saying big announcement at 9 a.m. and then it wasn't Ian Watson.
It will be this week, I think.
Yeah. Speaking of trolling, I thought Wigan's tweet to Warrington was very funny about the empty trophy cabinet. I don't know why
they took it down, didn't they?
Have some balls, keep it up there. That's funny. That's as I again put on Twitter, I was not offended by that. Salford, having to go at Warrington for beating them when Salford couldn't raise a team. I thought that was in bad taste. But Wigan having to go at Warrington, let's face it, Warrington have dished out a fair bit of stick to Wigan on social media. I thought that was very well timed and very well placed, and
I think
fair play to Wigan.
The phrase "hoisted by their own petard" would apply to the Wolves in that case. And no, it's a shame they took it down. Thank goodness for screenshotting. Otherwise, I wouldn't have seen it. But no, it was funny. If you're going to go down that road, then everything is fair game. And I think Super League said at the beginning of the year, we are going to encourage our clubs to be a little bit more adversarial. We know behind the scenes they all love each other. But, let's rile it up for the fans. Let's get people engaged. No, don't take it down. Put it back up.
It seems strange. We spoke about Ian Watson there moving to Huddersfield potentially. Andy Last could get Hull to the grand final this week, could win the grand final in a fortnight, and might not be in a job. It's a strange old world, the world of head coaching.
He's helping his CV at the moment, that's for sure, because I think those who looked at Hull when they came back from lockdown had that big defeat, didn't they, to Salford. We're saying, he's just the caretaker. It's just the interim. He comes with the Radford regime, and the decision was made to end that. Therefore, logic says he should go with it. I think the way that they played, certainly this week, and going into the fact that, as you said, they might get to the ultimate prize, the first team to do it from 6th. Oh, people will be incandescent with rage that want to first past the post system. He's making a very good play for the job, and he's doing it through the performances on the field. And I think that unless Hull have already agreed with somebody else and not announced it, they may have to rethink, because I think he's doing a pretty decent job.
And if he doesn't get that job, he's highly regarded by Sean Wayne. This is obviously, as you say, he's adding to his CV. I'm sure other clubs will be thinking, we might give him a go.
Whisper it here, because we know nobody takes any notice of what we say, and we are not influencers in any way whatsoever. Sean Wayne for Salford?
Be interesting, wouldn't it?
A lot of people on the Salford backroom and on the playing staff have got Wigan connections. We know, obviously, clearly that we're going into a World Cup year, and it's very important that he has full control over England. But we don't know yet about mid-season internationals. There is no reason why he couldn't do the England job part-time and still get involved in a club, one that's on his doorstep, perhaps. Who knows?
If we throw enough darts at these things, one of them will land eventually.
If it happens, you heard it here first. If you didn't, we never mentioned it.
No, it was some other show. I don't know which one. Well, is there any more on the field stuff to talk about, or have we covered everything?
Well, unless you want to do the women's state of origin.
I watched it. It was good, wasn't it?
Yeah.
As many people have pointed out, having Wally Lewis and Darren Lockyer at pitch side adds immediate credibility, and that's all you have to do.
Yeah.
If they're there, and it looks, and if they're there, and the TV are treating it as important, then it is important.
Yeah, and I think they're growing in a slightly different way to the women's game here, and I know that we have people on from time to time who are absolute experts in the women's game, and some even write a column in a magazine, and you'll get their opinion on this. But the way that they are building from, I think, a one-game Origin series to 3, the way that they're building from 4 teams to expressions of interest from probably at least 4 more, that's probably the way to do it.
Bring back Yorkshire, Lancashire, said people on Twitter. I think John Bateman just wants to, bash his Wigan teammates from Yorkshire, but it didn't work.
Yorkshire against the rest of the world might, but Yorkshire, Lancashire, forget it.
Especially as Lancashire isn't a thing. Yorkshire versus Greater Manchester, and Merseyside, and Cheshire doesn't have the same ring to it. But
I think as we may have said on this very forum before, the only team in Lancashire is actually Barrow, and it's a bit of an ask for them to play the whole of Yorkshire. And how that would help England, I've no idea. The only thing I could ask you is, who do you think will be the 12th team in Super League? Bearing in mind that we've now seen the criteria, and our guest coming up will give us some real insight into that from the Championship point of view. I think everything he says is probably more informed than anything we could say. But do you have a handle on who you think that 12th team will be before we get his opinion?
I haven't got a clue on everything, have I? But I am enjoying the complete conspiracy that it will be Bradford. I'm enjoying that conspiracy because it can't be.
Well, there's one very good reason why it can't be, and it's nothing to do with the fact that they don't play in Bradford. No. But I think if you, again, and it will all come out, the press conference with 3 learned gentlemen from Toronto, and find me 3 more learned gentlemen than Brian McDermott, John Wilkin, and Martin Vickers, made no secret of the fact that they believe that Toronto are the stick that is being used to beat the other governing bodies, and the whole of the exclusion of Toronto goes back to their inclusion in the first place, and that is being directly thrown at the door of the RFL, who you can read an interview with Robert Elstone in the new 4020 magazine, which is rather critical of them. Let's not beat around the bush. I think some of the arguments on which the decision was made are, from my point of view, fallacious. But clearly, one of the things that comes out from reading between the lines and what is even said is that it is a dispute between the lack of due diligence that they feel was done at the time and the fact that Super League feel they're picking up the pieces when economically they can't. So I think the fact that Nigel Wood is being held up as the person who was responsible for all that, how hypocritical would that be to then let the club in where Nigel Wood is the chief shareholder? So I think I can see why people are saying Bradford, and that the criteria have been brought in to include a top 6, to include a team that's got a clean bill of financial health after 2018. I get all of that, it fits, but that's why I can't see it being Bradford. I think it's down to one myself. I think it'd be London. And I think it'll be London on the basis of the fact that there is an element of expansion there, so that those in charge of the sport can say, of course we love expansion. But there were issues with Toronto, but look, London, that's not on the M62 corridor. I think they know that London were credible the last time they were in, working on a reduced budget. I think Danny Ward staying there is very important. That would give him focus. Clearly, they didn't spend a salary cap last time they were in Super League and very nearly stayed up. They're not going to get the same salary cap this time. I think the Sky would almost say, yeah, we can make something out of having London back because we can refer to how credible they were last time they were in. On the criteria that are listed, I think they will be the team, because Toulouse are ruled out for exactly the same reasons that Toronto are ruled out. And, if Toulouse were to come to the table and say, because we will be having a derby game with Catalan, here is a French TV deal and every one of the clubs is going to get something out of it, that would get them in. I think the fact that, again, it's this specious argument about they don't bring away fans, I think, yeah, obviously we'd all love Toulouse to be in there, but I just think that it's the team that on the field will last in Super League, the team that have the infrastructure for Super League is London. Now, I'm not saying whether it's the right or the wrong decision. On this press conference, I encouraged Toronto to apply. So I think they should be judged by an independent tribunal on the basis of all the other bids. And if the tribunal can honestly say that Toronto still isn't the best option, and throw that back at Robert Elstone, the Super League board, and say, right, we've gone through this independent process. That's what you wanted us to do. The 12th team is the team you've just kicked out. I think that would be fantastic. Absolutely brilliant. I'd love to see that. The ramifications of that would be sensational. I don't think it's going to happen, because I don't think Toronto have got the stomach to do that. But Toronto would be my choice as the 12th team.
Well, I can hear Brian in the background with the teas ready, which we've all missed in these times when we haven't been together. So we'll throw to our interview, and then we'll come back and talk politics. That's always good. In tribute to London, here comes the Forty20 TV Thames television ident, and we'll be speaking to the Halifax director of rugby, Ian Croad. Every time we interview anyone, I always say, I've got an easy question. It ends up being a difficult one, as Phil will attest to. But Ian, I'm going to ask you an easy one first.
Okay. Because
the role director of rugby means something different at every club, it seems. What does it mean at Halifax, and what is your role there?
Primarily, my role is to support Simon Griggs, the head coach. Obviously, the main target for Simon is new players and existing players, looking after the welfare. And on the new players, I give him advice, but ultimately the coach makes the decision. Once he gives me the shopping list, then I do the negotiating. So that's the main headline. Obviously, looking after the existing players. Simon coaches, and anything other than coaching is down to me. Any issues, any problems, any help, anything. So it's quite a varied role.
I suppose we should cut to the chase as well.
Okay.
Obviously, all the talk is about the 12th team in Super League for 2021. We've seen the application process come out, 15-page document, lots of terms and conditions.
Yeah.
Halifax initially, before that was issued, said we definitely want to be included. Are you now precluded from what you've seen, or will you be applying?
The criteria that came out on Friday, we have failed to qualify, so we're out. However, the criteria came out after the application, which is a little bit in reverse, and also within the criteria, the funding. Let's talk about that. Who in the right mind would try to go into Super League with £1 million? I mean, the rest have got 1.8. They've had 6 months start. It's an impossible task. So whilst I'm disappointed that we're not in the chase, the truth is we know what we've got to do, and we're not ready. But we have to be in the race. Had I known it was £1 million, I wouldn't have wasted my time. That's the truth.
So without putting words into your mouth, because we've again just come off a Zoom call with Toronto Wolfpack, and there are some issues that they've raised that I think are relevant to the conversations that we're going to have about the whole transparency of the decisions being made at the moment, and the they call it, and I think we have as well, a civil war that is currently going on still between Super League and the RFL. Do you honestly believe, now that you can stand back from this process, that the team that goes up is set up to fail?
Well, financially, unless you've got a benefactor, which I think London and Lee have, and partially Featherstone, but 800 grand is a massive amount to find just to stay with, and that's money that rightfully should be there. I can't understand why. It's hard enough putting a team together so late. The last team coming in will also have the problem that I negotiate player contracts, and the last team coming in, the players will want more money to go into that team because they know they're not going to win as many games, and they want more money for the inconvenience. So the team with less money is going to end up spending more money on a team that's not as good, and that again, you're set up to fail. Yeah, you're set up to fail.
Obviously, we mentioned before we started recording, 2020 has been a very difficult year for everyone. Halifax, you start the season and then everything grinds to a halt. The season's cancelled. How's the club looking in shape after that decision?
Well, look, this first and foremost, the season ticket holders, the sponsors have all, I think the percentage is about 90% or more than 90% have allowed the club to keep the money. That's a massive amount. Without that, we wouldn't be in the position we're in. The second thing that happened is furlough. Let's be honest, furlough has helped the club significantly. So we're in a good spot. We've renegotiated the existing players' contracts that were already contracted for next year. We've renegotiated them down in line with the conditions. So, we've reduced the overhead for next year on existing players. And also the incoming players, there's been probably a 20-25% reduction in the value they were in 2020 to the value they are in 2021. So that again, factoring in, we have, in my opinion, a much stronger team next year, but spending 20-25% less, which is a good place to be.
In terms of, again, I'm afraid this is a subject that probably isn't going to go away now, the Toronto and the 12th team and everything, and inevitably even talking to you about what maybe a 3 or 5 year plan for your club might look like, it's going to impinge upon all these discussions. This effectively is almost a licensing process, even if it's only for 1 year, because clearly no team has been on the field. So whichever one becomes the 12th team is being judged on conditions. Do you think that's right for the sport looking ahead, that it's not solely about your performance on the field, but we now do need to take a more holistic framing the future type approach?
Well, the 12th team coming in, it's about the performance. Firstly and foremostly, we are in the business of entertaining. So what is the point of a team, whichever team it may be, moving to the top table and not being able to perform to a decent level? Getting walloped every week by 50 points just because you've got a bigger fan base than Club B, or just because you've got an academy, or just, it's what people go to watch rugby. They don't go to talk about the academy. They don't go to talk about the financial structure of the business and how many directors, and it's what happens on the field. Well, there are some strong contenders and there are some that are not quite as strong, and there are some that are in the middle. So to me, firstly and foremost, it's got to be the team that can compete, and there's probably only 2 that spring to mind. The rest are not as good. Now, they've all got other attributes which, during the judging process, will get them over the line. But it's what happens on the field, to me. We're in the entertainment business. If we don't entertain, then we ain't got a business.
And in terms of the business and looking ahead and acknowledging how tough a year it's been for the world, never mind a sport within that world, what are your views on things like expansion? You're looking after one of the most traditional clubs in an area that has been hugely supportive, not only of the sport, but even in the formation of the sport. The Huddersfield Halifax area was there right at the very beginning. But a lot of the northern industrial base of it doesn't exist anymore, and Halifax would have suffered that as much as anywhere, with some of the mills it's famous for closing down.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have to expand as a sport? Can we afford to stay concentrated on the M62 corridor? Is that something that we shouldn't lose sight of at the moment?
I think you've got to look at this in two ways. I think from a spectator point of view, the M62 corridor, yes, but the game's not funded by spectators anymore. The game is funded by the largest TV company, Sky, and basically it's what they need that's more important than what we need. You know, they fund the game, so they're not going to sell dishes in Halifax or Huddersfield. They need to spread to other areas where they've not sold dishes for rugby league, and that's what finances the game. So I'm an expansionist. I believe, you know, my businesses were in America, and I was quite excited with the Toronto situation. I just felt if it was done properly, the North American TV, wow, you know, it's such a huge untapped market, which I know there's been some reports done by people, but look, I spent a lot of time in America, and the Americans are sports mad. Well, I think we've kind of hit a curveball by, well, not us. I think the sport, losing Toronto, I think if Toronto was run properly, there's definitely a place, and I think the benefits to all would have been far, far greater than whether we have a team in Yorkshire or a team in London, you know. That's my view anyway.
How do you think the championship's going to look next year? There's obviously been rumours of some kind of merger between the championship and League One. There's a potential of the new Sky deal being less filtering down. No one seems to know exactly what's going to happen yet next year.
Well, this is one of the issues, because we have to budget for next year, and when you do a budget, you do it to the best of your ability, but you take into consideration the teams you're going to be playing. Now, what time of year you play that team affects the income. Because if I play Bradford in July, it's a bigger gate than playing them in February because of the weather. All those factors are put into place, but at the moment we don't really know which teams are going to be in the championship and which aren't. And we've all done budgets and we've all signed players, and it's a risk. What was the question again? Sorry.
Do we have any idea how the championship's going to be formed next year?
Look, I mean, there's talk about. I mean, Bradford are a great club with a huge following, and it's a great local derby for Halifax and Bradford on Boxing Day, and they're one of the teams that could be in Super League. So who knows? I mean, I did see the proposal to merge, which, look, I think it's more of a desperation thing than an actual. So if two divisions merge, you're going to end up with the same teams winning at the end of the year. So no, I'm not a fan of two divisions merging. I'm just not.
Because
so I think.
Sorry, you mentioned budgets. It's going to be hard to, with the greatest of respect to a West Wales, say, it's going to be hard to sell that to the Halifax public to say, come down and watch us win by 50, 60 points, perhaps.
Well, without being disrespectful, yeah, exactly. And then, what happens at the end of the year, the top 4 teams in each division, which we all know who they are, it's the top championship teams, end up being the winners or being, competitive. So nobody wants to see teams get beat by 60. They want to see teams compete and entertain, which I think it was more of a sort of a plea from League One to stay at the table, not to be ignored. And you know what? League One's got a place in the game, and we need to protect all levels, grassroots, League One, Championship, which, 2022 is looming, and at the moment, my focus is on what's happening in 2022 with Sky deal and with the finance and what's left. And, I've signed players on 2-year deals. Well, at the moment, there's a distinct possibility that there'll be no distribution. So we go from celebrating 125 years of rugby in 2020 to potentially falling off a cliff in 2022. What's going on? It's just madness.
I think that's the catalyst behind a lot of this, isn't it? That clearly nobody knows, be that at the top table or the tiers below, what the distribution is going to be from 2022 onwards. Although the likelihood is, looking at the rights being sold currently in the television market and the economic strictures that have affected broadcasters as much as the clubs themselves, that it will be less. I think we'd be very surprised if Sky came up and said have more. We'd be delighted if they said have the same. I think the likelihood is this is jockeying for position around perhaps having less. To the best of your knowledge, the way the deal looks like it would be carved up is that League One would be left with nothing. The Championship and the RFL might have very little, and everything would go to Super League. Does that mean that automatically the Championship and League One are completely unsustainable if that was to happen?
Well, it depends on what level each club relies on the distribution, which, you know, the distribution as a percentage of our business is about 20%, which you lose 20% income in any business, and it's not terminal, but it's going to affect it. Now, I'll go back to what I said earlier. We're in the entertainment business, and if we've got 20% less income and we can't replace it with something else, then we've got 20% less buying power to put the entertainment factor on the field. Would we survive? Yes, we'd survive. Would we be competitive? It depends on what the others do, you know. Well, we've been focused on for the last 12 months in trying to find other income streams and other ways that we can improve the business. So it's not something that's just turned up on, you know, last week. We've been working on it for 12 months. We've got some quite exciting announcements coming out in December, which I can't unfortunately go into, but it's addressing the declining gates, which is what, quite ironically, what we got dropped out of the Super League challenge on, the size of our gates. Well, we've got some plans in place to reverse that, and it's all part of a long-term strategy which we're all working on. So would we no, if we lose this, if the Sky money reduces, then we'll be fine. If it goes away, some clubs will be hurt more than others, and I think some possibly will not be able to continue, which is sad. And I go back, you know, we celebrate the 125 years one year, and then potentially we losing clubs 2 years later. It's just madness.
Do you think we do enough to sell the Championship as a product in its own right? And the one thing that has happened over the last 2 or 3 years is it's built into an incredible competition. And a lot of the teams in there are on equal footing on and off the field. And I think we all know from having watched Rugby League for a very long time, in my case, that if you get two teams that are evenly matched, it doesn't matter what you call the division, it's just a great spectacle. Have we spent too much time looking at a destination that the Championship doesn't need to be at? Can it effectively be a competition that is attractive to fans and broadcasters in its own right? And is that how it should be looking at itself at the moment?
Well, look, I go back to when the Championship was on TV on a Thursday night. I saw the TV figures, and they doubled in a 12-month period. And at the same time, Sky was tabling Super League, and the numbers were, let's say, static. So in my world, there was a need for Championship. However, we must be the only sport being paid not to be on TV, because that's effectively what the Sky deal is. It's a fee to not be on TV and compete against Sky, against the Super League teams at the same time, which the value of that is significant. The question is, what's the true value of the Championship going to the open market? And I don't think anybody really knows what that is. I think we've all got suspicions that it probably wouldn't be the same level, but until you go out looking, you don't know. Now, going out looking is a brave move currently, but I'm sure there are people out there weighing up both options. You know, I don't get involved at the in those kinds of negotiations, but that's it. Yeah.
In terms of Halifax as a club, because you are as representative as any, I mean, you've got the history, you've got the tradition, you've got plans for the future. Would it be enough for let's say the sport came up with a 3 and a 5 year plan, for you to reconcile yourself with the fact that winning a championship grand final, let's say Headingley in front of 15,000 fans and getting a civic reception at Halifax Town Hall, the possibility of getting to Wembley, which would be the most, again, a wonderful day out to see those blue and white hoop shirts there again, through the 1895 Cup. Is that enough to sustain you? Do you have to have Super League as a goal? Batley are one club that are constantly referenced as saying, we think we've got a niche for ourselves here and we can make money and be successful and fulfil our obligations to our community in the championship because it's a valuable competition in its own right. Would it be unfair to say that that's the place for Halifax in the immediate future?
I don't think it's unfair to say that. I think there's two ways of looking at it. Some fans maybe would like Halifax to be a top 5 team every year, winning 75% of the games and putting on a great show every week. Some fans don't accept that. Some fans think, without moving into Super League, you've got no real, what's the word? Ambition. Yeah. And sanity and vanity comes to mind when I start talking about ambition, because the bottom line, the finances that we face, the financial difficulties that we face in the championship, when you get into Super League, you put another nought on the end of those financial challenges and they become serious challenges. So a lot of the Super League clubs have got financial benefactors, which is not really how you run a business, but it works in the Super League that we know. Now, we're not lucky enough to have an individual that is prepared to write 7-figure checks every year. So it has to be done on performance as a business. Well, sport is not a normal business either. That's the other thing, it's a 9-month income and a 12-month expense. That itself is massive, and also changes in weather. If it rains on match day, you lose 500 on your gate. I mean, these are just things that we face every week. In Super League, those issues would be much, much harder to follow. However, Super League is the game that is the top of the table. Super League is on TV. All the things that in sport, when you want to be the best, you've got to be the best. So I have one eye. Yes, I would like to be in Super League, but I also like the thought of being at the top of the championship and competing and entertaining every week. And I think if we get that right, then we've got a decision to make. Do we want it? And I think we're at that point, really. We get to the point where we need to get back into the top 5 every year and then look at it,
Halifax were involved in the Super 8s when they were a thing. How and obviously you've had success in the Challenge Cup in recent years, getting to the semi-finals at Bolton. How did you see that Challenge Cup run? But the Super 8s as a format, was that something you were a fan of?
I quite liked the Super 8s. The problem with it was you need a bigger squad, because to play against full-time Super League teams at the end of the season, when your players are carrying little niggles and knocks and injuries and they're not quite at the best and they're being hit by this massive muscle mountain, it takes it out of the team. So you need a bigger team to rotate. Had we had a bigger team and a bit more prep and a little bit more finance, I think, looking back how we handled it, I think we'd do it differently. But you're always going to be up against it, to play the gulf between part-time and full-time and Super League and Championship. It's huge. But you know what? The players loved it. They loved the challenge. The fans loved it. The TV, everybody liked it. It was a good concept. And I just think it needs a little bit more thought. And also, if you're talking about the share of Sky funding, if you like. Well, if you put the summer bash and the games that we were on TV as a percentage, it kind of balances with the amount of finance that we receive from Sky. And if we're not on, it's just another reason to say, well, you're not coming to the table. So yeah, I liked it. I mean, it wasn't perfect. There's nothing perfect, but I quite liked it.
We've spoken about the Summer Bash before, and it's almost a shame that it seems to always coincide with a round of Super League games. I mean, last time I think we had that Catalans Wigan game in Barcelona in the middle of the first day in Blackpool. And for those wanting to make a decision whether to go to Blackpool and Barcelona, and I enjoy going to the Summer Bash, for those who think, well, I might get a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity here, I guess it's another chance, another sign of just the game not working together, and promoting the Summer Bash as a great event for all rugby league fans and not just those in the Championship.
Yeah, I think that was a bit of a wrong call. But again, the broadcaster decides, we don't have a say in it. I like the Bash. I think the Bash, it's got legs and it needs to be worked on. I think it needs to be. I like the location in Blackpool. I think it gives the fans. Look, the fans need a day out. We've lost the Northern Rail Cup. That was a fantastic day out. The playoffs at the end of the year, when we used to have the Championship playoffs and there was a trophy at stake, all those days, that's what fans build up to. Merchandise in the shop, merchandise sells. If you get a cup final, you get an extra 30% income from your merchandise, which it's all gone. So the Summer Bash, to me, I think we've got to work at it. We've got to make it so that more of the Championship teams attend, because I don't think if you're honest, the crowd is not great for the amount of teams that are there. So I think it needs marketing, it needs pushing, it needs working on. What's the other one called? The Super League version. Can't even remember what it's called.
Magic Weekend.
The Magic Weekend. Thank you. The Magic Weekend. Look at that now. It's a great event. Sells out. Moving it around. I mean, taking it to Newcastle was a fantastic move. And Halifax playing at the Summer Bash in Blackpool. It's just great. I love it.
I know you're not going to let us into any secrets about how you intend to increase your crowds until you're ready to do so. But one of the things that's always struck me about areas like Halifax, and the club is central and integral to this, is the work that you do in the community.
Yeah.
Clearly, I know you would want more resource to do even more, and there are issues within the Calderdale area that you want to get involved with that maybe you can't finance at the moment. But how important is that to you going forward, that you don't lose touch with foundation work, if I could put it like that? And how much is that going to be the trigger for getting more people through the game?
Listen, that's the vehicle that we're going to use. Look, our demographic, our season ticket holders, the average age of our season ticket holders is the wrong end of the spectrum. So we have to address that. So we're not going to address that by standing around. So the foundation that we have is geared up to visit all of the schools, and we've got a new campaign, and it's all going to be coming online. That's, without the community, we're nothing. We are a community club basically, and that's where the work needs to be done. And there is some plans in place, which obviously I can't divulge at this point, but it starts in the community, and we've got a really exciting proposal next month, which I think people will. What's the word? People will be. It's a Marmite. It'll be either very, 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 very successful or it won't. But at the end of the day, there's reasons behind it, and
you're not going back to the Blue Sox, are you?
No, absolutely not. No.
The other thing, you've got around you some of the best community clubs.
We have.
So you look, for example, at Sidall, which is within your neighbourhood. How frustrating is it that their best players don't automatically come into your system? You can't realise a transfer fee because Morgan Smithies has been in your academy and you've sold him on to Wigan. And again, is that something that we need to look at as a sport, that something's gone wrong there, that you're producing players but not for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's frustrating, but those players are empowered to play at the highest level, you know. So it's not right for us to sit on a player just because he's in our area. However, I do think that some of these Super League clubs that come in and sign them at 15 and 16 and then they spend the next 3 or 4 years, I think there's a role for Halifax to play in being the caretaker and allowing those players to play within our organisation to get them ready, because the jump from playing at Siddle to Academy to Super League, every jump is massive. You know, playing against men, massive. So, you know, rather than the player go to a Super League Academy for 3 or 4 years and then fail and then come to us, I'd rather see us be part of the process, form the relationship. We've got a great relationship with Huddersfield Giants. And I think we should all be working together, all of the clubs, to get the players to play at the highest level. No one club should be allowed to hold players just to sign them. I think that's wrong. So I'm not upset that we lose them. I'm just upset that, well, not upset. I just think there should be more emphasis on what the player needs, and we should all be helping that player get there.
So does dual registration work for you? Obviously, clearly, clubs do it differently. Relationships between clubs within that partnership are different. There isn't a set of criteria. You know, the Doncaster Hull model, as it was originally set out, seemed to be a blueprint that wasn't taken up by too many other organisations. Can you see that working for you? Because I think one of the feelings that that perhaps it wouldn't work was there's a junior and a senior partner in all of this, and the junior partner gets taken for granted. Yeah. Can you see a dual registration system whereby you get as much out of it as, let's say, Huddersfield would?
Look, I don't think there's any perfect situation for two such imbalanced businesses or such different businesses. The dominant partner is always going to be the decision maker. But it's down to the relationship that you have with the individuals in each business. So I've got a great relationship with Richard Thewlis. We speak regularly. But again, that's only as good as, you know, director to director, because what really counts is the coach to coach. Now, the coach's needs change weekly, and that's the problem. The problem is, you know, they might have the best intentions to provide a link or a pathway for a player that's ready to play, not quite ready to play Super League and needs a little bit of game time, but then they get an injury, so that player, instead of going down that path, gets put into the first team. So it's circumstances, you know. At the end of the day, it works if everything else works alongside it, and unfortunately, that's life. Things change. We're happy with it. You know, next year it's gone, but we will be using the loan system. The difference there is that players have to come for a minimum of 4 weeks, which makes the outgoing coach's decision a little bit more. Can that coach allow that player to be not around for 4 weeks? That's a little bit more difficult. But if they've got 15 spare players, then there's no reserves, there's no plan B. If they need game time, they've got to accept it's 4 weeks. And you know what? That'll actually help us, because I'd rather have a player for 4 weeks than in and out and change around. And so it's how you manage it. And I think, you know what? Some people have abused it in the past, but Halifax are happy with the relationship we've got with Huddersfield. It works, and that's because we've set it up to work. You know, we've had the initial meetings, and we've laid the foundations down, and we know what is expected of us. Huddersfield know, you know, it's a relationship. It's a two-way. Any business, it's got to be a two-way relationship. Otherwise, it ain't a business or it ain't a relationship. So.
You've mentioned, obviously, going into 2021, we don't know the format of the league yet. Furlough coming to an end again, but it looks like we are starting without crowds. How does that affect things from a business side of the club? Obviously, from a playing side, the players will get used to it, but no money coming in, but you've still got to pay the players. Yeah,
well, there are plans in place to look. they're talking about, this is not definite, but they are talking about the league season starting the beginning of April. But before then, we would normally all championship clubs would arrange friendlies to try and generate some off-season income. Then there would be the 1895 Cup, which is possibly taken over from friendlies. So there is talks of, prior to April, combining the 1895 Cup and the Challenge Cup preliminary rounds into an opt-in scenario where you've got to opt in to do it. You know what? The budget for friendlies or the budget for cups is very low anyway. We don't budget to make a profit. Now, what excites me is that there are plans in place to potentially to live stream. So if there are no crowds allowed in, there will be a facility, hopefully, to stream. And there's two ways of doing that. You can do it free for season ticket holders, both home and away, or charge. Well, I think if it's a cup match, season ticket holders are not don't normally get entry anyway. So you know that the income from the crowds, the income from cup games is not huge because it's usually a reduced rate, it's usually a reduced crowd, it's usually this the same expense. So streaming at a reasonable amount possibly will be the same or better. So and at least it gets we need to put a start date on the season. Fans need to have something to aim at, and to say it might be April, it's not. We need to be saying we are going to start 1895 Cup stroke Challenge Cup rounds in February, end of February or March, and there'll be so many rounds, etc., and then we'll start the league in April. And if we can do that, if we've got the contingencies in place to cover the financial costs of that, everyone's happy.
How proud have you been of Brandon Moore? Because using him as an example of how a relationship between clubs works, he's been a fantastic advert for the kind of player that you're developing down at Halifax. I think his average number of tackles in a game was over 50. And he's proved that with very little conditioning, having not played for a very long time, that he could handle himself at Super League level and was an asset to the club. Does that reflect really well on you that you produced a player that could so easily step into to that environment?
Well, look, we didn't produce him, let's be honest. He came from Castleford's academy, and he was Player of the Year before he came to Halifax. He was already on the radar. He was a good player before he came. So we're not taking credit for that. We just helped him get better. But yeah, to go out there and put the shift in that he did. I mean, we knew he could do it. Otherwise, we wouldn't have allowed him to go. It's been a burning ambition of his to play Super League, and he's in the area that he's got a really good job. And for him to play Super League, he would need a decent salary, and that's one of the issues in, Brandon's combined wage from working and rugby is significant, and I just don't think that there'll be Super League clubs out there that will offer that amount. But he's done it. Now, we would never stand in the way of a player. If a Super League club came in, we wouldn't stand in the way. But we're happy that he's with us next year.
We're running short on time, as we always seem to do with these things. I'll let Phil ask something else in a minute, but just from my final point of view, what's the general feeling then around Halifax going into 2021? And I guess trying to get fans back into the habit, because we've all had 6 or 7 months now of doing nothing, or well, for some of us, others at key workers have had plenty to do. But for those of us who've been sat at home with nothing to do, we've kind of got out of the habit of going to watch rugby league games. I guess that's part of the strategy to get them back into the ground next year.
Yeah, look, we're very excited. We've got a great, probably one of the most exciting teams assembled for a decade. Simon's addressed some of the areas that he thought needed addressing. I think every incoming player that's replaced an outgoing player has been an improvement. And I think the biggest thing he's done is specialists. I think we've probably been guilty in the past of playing utilities rather than specialists. Now we've bought specialist prop, specialist back row, specialist hooker, etc. So I think that move by Simon, it was a smart move. Now I am very, very optimistic for next year. I think the fans have got a lot to be cheerful about. We're going to have an exciting team on there, and instead of scrambling to be in the top 5, I think we're going to be in the 5, 4, 3. We're going to be up there, and we're going to surprise a few. With all the other off-field, what should we call it? There are some off-field.
I don't want to say shenanigans.
I nearly said it. I nearly said it.
Innovation. You've got some innovations.
That's the word, innovations. You know, and yeah, the fans have been starved. We've all been starved. We all want to watch rugby. It's going to be over a year probably by the time we get back out there. But you know, we're ready for it, and I think the fans should be excited. It's going to be a great season. I just want to get going. I just need to get going, like we all do.
Anything else, Phil?
I've only got one question, but first of all, yeah, just the one. I mean, thank you for your insight. I think it's really important, particularly at this time when everybody's so obsessed with what might be happening in division above, that we don't forget the hard work that's going on in the Championship. And I think everything you've said, if I was a Halifax fan, would give me hope, and I think that's all you can do at the moment.
Yeah.
But what on earth is it going to be like around the place? And this is nothing to do with playing, not having Scott Morrell. Your life will be so much easier, won't it?
Peter Pan has left the building. Look, Muzzer was part of the furniture. Not just a great player, what a fantastic bloke. I just can't speak high enough about the guy. And, you know, we sat down. He'd got to the ripe old age of 30-something and needed to be looking at the future. Now, yeah, he could have stayed at Halifax. We could have kept him, but he was offered a position where he could play rugby and potentially he could get a job around that. Now, we can only give him a contract for 12 months, and Muzzer needs something for the next 35 years. And, you know, I kept saying to him, forget us, you know, look after yourself. And the guy was absolutely in bits, but he had to make the call for himself and his family. And that's what people really don't understand. You know, we don't own these players. You know, these players come for a short period of time and they entertain. And it's important that these players set up for the rest of their life. And that's an example. You know, Muzzer, great guy. He will always be welcome at the club. And I know he's going to come back. And I know when he's not playing at Keighley, he'll be down. But, you know, the reason behind that, and the fans need to understand that these players have got the rest of their lives to lead. And we've got to help them. And that's what we did.
And the only other question I had, the World Cup, when it was last in this country, there was a great game at Halifax, a Sunday afternoon. I think, 4,500 people in lots of colour, noise.
9,877, I think it was.
Yeah, 4,500 were in the corporate, I think, as well. Never got out to see the game.
Yeah.
It was a wonderful afternoon. Do you expect spin-offs from the 2021 World Cup? Is that something that you'd be looking at and saying, if this goes well, we can trade on the back of it?
You know what? I'm disappointed we didn't get a game at the Shea. You know, I don't know what. I was part of the process that negotiated getting a game at the Shea last time, and I didn't have any conversations this year. I don't know what went wrong. It would have been. I would have liked to have seen a game at the Shea, and I think the back of that, yeah, you get a lot of pluses. You get a lot of. It's just a great day. You know, different people coming in, and we're going to miss out this year, unfortunately. And it's a shame. It's a real shame.
It was a great day. I was there as a volunteer at that World Cup, and it was, as Phil says, a very noisy and colourful afternoon.
Fantastic.
A great time.
Yeah, I mean, for such a small stadium to nearly fill it, you know, I'd like to see it full every week. It's a different game. It's a different feel in a small stadium that's full. The atmosphere, it's just fantastic. So I don't know why. It's just a massive shame, really. There should be a game there, but for some reason, it's not.
So we'll hopefully at some point in 2021 be able to watch a game at Halifax. So fingers crossed everything goes well with vaccines and
Well,
social distancing.
Stand by for a great season because I think it's going to be a cracker. I'm excited.
Ian, we're excited as well now. It always takes a guest to get me excited about things. So thanks very much for your time this afternoon. We wish you all the best in 2021. Fingers crossed, of course, so we get fans back and enjoying life at Halifax. And we look forward to hearing about these innovations. We're excited, especially with it being described as Marmite.
Keep your eye on social media the first week of December.
That's soon.
That's all I'm saying.
But the main takeaway is it's not the return of the blue socks, so everyone can.
No.
What Ian said that was really significant was that clearly there has to be aspiration in sport and life, and if Super League exists, then you need to reconcile yourself to the fact that it's there. But he almost told us what we've been talking about for absolutely ages, that if you're not full time, you probably don't have that avenue to get to the top table. But there is a place for being part time, and I think again, to have a plan whereby we build up the championship, we finish regularly in the top 5, we have competitive games, we have finals that we can get to, be that a divisional final or the 1895 cup final, that there possibly is a chance then to take the championship and sell it as a package in its own right. And yeah, you and I both know it isn't going to be on terrestrial television at peak time, but Rugby League Raw was a template of what you can do with the championship. You can do a highlights package with access that other sports don't normally give, build up the personalities, get a weekly narrative going that builds up to a game on the field that means everything. There are channels that would be interested in that. That's how we consume sport at the moment. That's how NFL got a foothold in this country, that you don't need to see a full 80-minute Halifax game, but if you can see Halifax's progress through the season and you can get characters in the dressing room that you can identify with, and there's loads of them in the championship, then clearly what you can do is create a package that is of appeal to a Channel 4 or a Channel 5. Then they're not going to come looking for you. You've got to go to them and say, this is what we can offer you. So I think we need to focus on how good the championship is, and can be over a sustained period of time, and not worry too much about clubs saying, I might be here but I want to be somewhere else, because I think that just takes the focus off the championship, to be honest.
Interesting times in 2021. It was interesting. Bradford City released the figures of those numbers of streamers of their matches recently. And obviously you have to pay or whatever it is in the Football League. And they're one of the biggest supporting clubs in their division. The numbers weren't great. So I think the price point has to be right for the RFL and the clubs. You can do it, I don't want to say on the cheap, but you can do it on the cheap. You don't need to spend money on multiple cameras for what is a second tier game. You can just have 2 cameras or whatever, like we did for the Women's Challenge Cup final. It was, obviously the BBC, when they did it a year after, had much more resources. We had a small budget. You can do things on a budget and still make money, and in effect, it's a way your money is. You don't want to better profit margins. That's what we need for those games next year, and hopefully something can be arranged, and hopefully there's some money to be made, and hopefully some money for the commentators as well, because we all need some money at these this time with there being no sport.
I think the good thing was he was so upbeat about everything that Halifax are doing, and he was saying that furlough had been a saviour, and clearly this has been the most difficult year that clubs have had because they haven't been able to play, and that's never happened before, outside of a war year where it might have been an emergency or whatever. But I just think that the fact that he was so positive was something that we can all latch onto, but particularly Halifax fans.
Before we get on to the politics, congratulations to Gerwyn Price, former South Wales Scorpion, who won the World Cup of Darts the other week.
Oh, I'm delighted.
Yeah, so, well done for a former rugby league player does something successful.
I suspect there'll be an email winging its way from Wales as we speak, extolling his links to the Welsh development pool.
Not yet. But the tweet will be there eventually. They are very proactive, the Welsh Rugby League. Well, they just put us in all the time on all their tweets. It's great stuff. More content, the better. That's what we like. Politics. I had a briefing with Robert Elstone, and I replied to the email saying, "Yes, please send me a link," and they didn't send me the link. So I have no idea what Robert Elstone said on Friday morning. I assume he was well grilled by the great men and women of the rugby league media.
One of the problems with Zoom meetings is that it then becomes a little bit piecemeal, and you only get your window and you can't really follow up, and topics move about a lot. So whilst you appreciate the opportunity to pose a question, there isn't continuity. You know, what would have been better would have been Jeremy Paxman sat with him in the studio, and us all being able then to watch it. So diplomacy, where I have no axe to grind. I think at the time that it was mooted that Robert might be coming back into the sport, I think this show championed him and said he could be the person we need with the contacts that he's got. We always railed against the idea that two effective governing bodies probably didn't work, and that perhaps if there was going to be one, maybe he was the bloke to head it up. I just thought
This is diplomacy in action here.
Yeah, there is a quiz show on Radio 5 called Fighting Talk, which I think we've all listened to. Brian Noble's been on it. Martin Kellner is a staple on it. To win that competition, you have to go through the final round, which is called Defend the Indefensible. And if Robert Elstone had been on it, talking about the Toronto Wolfpack decision, he would have won. That's all I'll say. But you can read all about his answers in great depth and detail, and his justification in the magazine. He's got the space. His comments are faithfully reproduced. Clearly there is editorial comment in there where we disagree with a lot of the rationale behind it. This Wolfpack press conference today, which was predominantly to launch a GoFundMe for the players, because one of the things that's the fallout of them effectively ceasing to exist by this decision is that there won't now be back pay. Part of the Livolsi agreement was he was going to clear the debts of the players and the staff. David Argyle is still being pursued. He knows that he is liable and he's trying to liquidate some of his assets to fulfill those obligations, but in the interim, people who haven't been paid for 6 months, there's a fund being set up to help them. But they were incredibly critical of the process, and I cannot argue with any one of the points that they made. It has been a political decision.
The one thing I would have asked Robert Elstone on Friday was, how disappointed was he, or is he rather, with the amount of leaks that come out of his organisation? He is like Boris Johnson at the press conferences, where he's not there at the moment, but this report which has been leaked piecemeal on social media, and how much of that is accurate or not. The problem with social media, one of them, is people believe what they want to believe. Well, it's that Donald Trump thinks he's won the American election and it's all a fix, even though we all know it's not. Or that all this report is nonsense about Toronto. Because this report's never been released, we don't know how much of this is accurate. It's in the style of a report produced by Super League, which adds credibility to it, but I don't know if it's genuine or not. But people want to believe it, so they believe it is.
I have a copy of it.
Oh, you have a copy of it?
And as John Wilkin could say far more eloquently than I, if you want to set up the agenda that produces a report to match your view, it's a fair and balanced report.
Like when I did A-level geography and had to questionnaire 100 people and just made up the results so they suited my hypotheses. That's fair enough. But I don't think I can take a D from A-level away from me now, so I think I'm okay on that one. Well, if you've seen it, then that's, you know.
I think there are, as we said last week, that you've got to look at two different issues. One is, was Carlo Livolsi liquid of fund? And the answer is yes. No more or less than a lot of other people that own sporting clubs, rugby league or otherwise. So the issue wasn't necessarily about that. I think what's upset people more than anything is the absolute lack of ambition that shines through from the way that report was written, that says North America's too hard. And even though it hasn't cost us anything, and we've got 10,000 people, and we built something, you know, that we could capitalise upon, we're not going to do it. And that seems very anti the way rugby league is to me. You know, we fight our corner. The more we're told that it's going to be hard, the more we roll our sleeves up and go, that's why we're going to do it. And it just seems wrong that we have abandoned something that has undoubted potential because it fits a different agenda.
And they're gone now, those 10,000 people. Yeah, there'll be a few that will watch the NRL or whatever, but they're gone. They're not coming back. No,
and I think the other thing that clearly is coming to the fore now is that if you were Ottawa, and clearly in the article, Robert Elstone makes no secret of it, you know, there is no open gateway. So, you know, we've agreed this principle of promotion relegation, but if Ottawa are going to be to us what we've told you Toronto are, then there is no place for them. And I think that has wider implications than Super League making a decision on which teams are in its competition. And that's what we've got to be wary of, that they're making decisions that are beyond their remit, I think.
Do you remember when Bradford were readmitted? And readmitted is probably the wrong word, because this is when they were back in the Championship, and we covered the game on Radio Yorkshire because I remember it at Hull KR. And Ralph Rimmer said to Mark or some of that, he spoke to one of their fans,
yes,
who'd been watching them for 40 years or whatever, so seen, you know, many incarnations of that club. So one person can shape Ralph Rimmer's mind, but 10,000 can't shape the mind of Rob Elstone. But they're not real anyway; they're all cardboard cutouts, as we know. So I don't know. As you say, it's all politics and it's all disappointing, and it's opportunities.
It's opportunistic as well in many ways. It is a case of the tail wagging the dog, which is not to be detrimental to anybody who owns a Super League club or has put money into the sport, but it's been like that for 125 years. This is just the latest manifestation of it, and unless we want to do something about that, then we shouldn't be surprised or annoyed, and our blood pressure shouldn't be as high as mine will be in a minute.
But Lord Kane's going to sort it all out anyway, because he's independent.
Yeah, but then the conspiracy theorists are saying he's a Rhinos fan, so
fan. Yeah, I find
they want Bradford back in, so it'll happen.
Rugby league. Why do we bother? I don't know why we bother.
I don't know. It's got a hold on us.
Yeah, can't figure out why. So Toronto have launched this GoFundMe, which is, I'm sure people will get upset about it because they get upset about everything. But the fact remains there are players and staff
in two countries who have not been paid for 6 months. Brian McDermott, again, who is somebody I do respect, has said that effectively he ran out of money in August. Now, he's not asking for money for him.
No.
He's asking money for everybody. But he has, you know, not been able to look for employment elsewhere because he wanted to support the Toronto bid for as long as there was a Toronto bid. But he's out of pocket doing it. And, you know, I just think if you've got compassion in your soul, you know, there are some fantastic people who've worked to build this club up to what it was, not least in Canada, and they've all been forgotten about. So yeah, players absolutely are, you know, they're forefront because we see them, they carry the colours. But there's a lot of really good people, you'll know, that work behind the scenes at clubs for very little money who haven't been paid for 6 months and been tossed aside. So yeah, we all, if we can, have an obligation to at least look at the site, and if we can help.
Yeah, the brief time I spent working at Wakefield earlier this year before furlough taught me a lot about how clubs are run and how hard people work to keep them going. And I don't think people appreciate that enough.
Well, I think Ian Croad showed us that in the interview that he's just done. That what did he say? That he only turned up as a sponsor about 12 years ago, and he's now director of rugby, and he can't get away from the place. So that's a manifestation of what everything we've been talking about.
So there's lots of new kits out now, so everyone can moan about those. I do like
badges
and badges. Yeah, I'm not overly sold on the Salford one. I was talking to somebody else at another club this week, and I get the feeling it'll age quickly because it's a cartoony kind of thing. But I'm not saying it's a bad badge or anything. You know.
Good job it wasn't a caricature of Ian Watson.
Well, no, they've only just rebranded.
Like the devil used to.
Devil, yeah. I haven't heard from him for a while. Man, you have muted him on Twitter. That's probably why.
I think he's pinning his colours to the lee mast.
Yeah. Well, the Judge Rinder reunion of those two. Yeah, Lee, he's very very outspoken at the moment, is Mr. Bowman, isn't he? I wonder if this decision doesn't go their way, and they have obviously signed a lot of players. If this decision doesn't go their way, there's no in the bid document or whatever it is, the terms and conditions. There's no room for appeal. So I don't know. We don't know.
Which would be great if Toronto applied, got in, and the Super League couldn't appeal.
Shall we buy the
trademark making?
How much can I buy the Wolfpack badge for? We'll just relaunch it in a few years' time, alongside Pyongyang. No. I think that's it. I don't think anything else is it?
We've covered everything there.
Yeah, I think we have. The magazine's out, apart from Robert Elstone, and a lovely front cover. Noble and Danica and me writing some stuff. Hopefully ready to it because I didn't write that much this month. What else is going on in the magazine?
One thing we do want to promote, because we think it's a fabulous cause, and we've got a feature and an advert, is Borough 7.
Yes.
The new racehorse. Again, details of if you wanted to buy a share or a forelock, they're in there, and the reasoning behind it, and why it's so appropriate. So there's some stuff on that, and some there is a piece in there about expansion, and it's basically revisiting a piece that Eddie Waring wrote 70 years ago. And when you read it, you'll realise why what is happening today should not surprise us.
That is the worry when I look at these old Rugby League Review magazines from the 40s and 50s. All the issues
are taken from Rugby League Review in 1950. So read that and weep, as they say.
He was very, and I know we know this obviously, and wrote the book about it. He was very ahead of his time, wasn't he? And
yeah,
I know people didn't like listening to him in some ways, but they maybe should have listened to him in others.
Well, that's the thing. He was a showman and an entrepreneur, and he understood selling a sport. And again, hopefully people will read it and they'll just go, "Oh, I can't believe that isn't today."
Bring back the trilbies. We saw with Avery the other week. Bring back trilbies. And apart from that, stop pretending to be David Argyle on Twitter, whoever that is. Just.
I think has he gone already or she?
I don't know.
I didn't follow them anyway.
No, there's so much nonsense on there at the minute. It's just that's just the good burgers of the Rugby League. I don't know. I see you're busy, so I shall let you go and.
Well, it's all click and collect these days.
Yeah, well.
So you could probably hear the clicking in the background and a bit of the collecting. I
expected some sound effects then, but nothing happened. Disappointed. Phil, thank you very much.
Always a pleasure.
Thanks again to Ian. We will be back at some point. I've got another project which will be out this week. Keep your eyes out for that. When we've got some more guests, we'll have them on.
And we'll be able to preview a grand final next week.
Yes, we will. Maybe it will be Hull, Scoey's Hull in the grand final. Maybe. Or Wigan versus St Helens, as we said. Having to travel all the way over to the Caircom Stadium. Well, enjoy the week in Rugby League. We will, and enjoy all the politics as well. It's all great fun. Thanks for watching. Like, share, subscribe, download, do all the things you're supposed to do, because we don't say that enough. Thanks for listening, and goodbye.